Welcome to Voices of Resilience by Silver Screen Family, where we celebrate the remarkable stories of LGBTQIA+ elders. If you're as inspired as we are by these stories, please show your support by clicking the subscribe button below. By subscribing, you'll stay updated with our latest episodes and help us share these invaluable stories with a wider audience. Thank you.
Before we dive into this podcast, we'd like to extend a special thank you to the Bishopsgate Institute for graciously allowing us to film on their premises. We truly appreciate their support in making this series possible.
I'm Barry Skanes, and I'm originally from Australia, although I've lived most of my life in the UK, not in Australia. But my early years in Australia certainly were formative, not just because of Australia, but I was fortunate in being born into a large and loving family. My father was one of 10, and where the family lived, it was very close to a beach. And so often, when we were kids, my brother and sister and me, after we'd been to the beach, Dad would suggest going to visit grandfather. And we'd go around there, and there'd be other relatives there. And grandfather would sit at the pianola, and all the uncles and aunts were up dancing. They really enjoyed being together. I've never heard anyone say anything disparaging about another member of the family. They were just so supportive. And I think that helped me, helped make me the person that I am today. If I hadn't had that support in my early life and all through my childhood and teens, I think I would have developed in a different way. And I was born just after the war. Actually, no, the war was still on. And because there's a housing shortage in Australia, or at least in Sydney where I was born, we moved constantly and often living with this relative or that relative. And I quite enjoyed it, actually. I didn't find it disruptive. And there's one occasion we lived with an uncle of my mother and his wife. She was a bit like, I realise now, she's a bit like, what was the name? Cynthia Bucket. And the house was just a very simple bungalow on a main road opposite a brickworks. Now, how it could be like Cynthia Bucket living opposite a brickworks. And that was when I first started going to school. And when I came home in the afternoon, I had to go into what used to be called a ham and beef shop, but they'll now be called a delicatessen. And a woman behind the counter would come out and escort me across the busy road to take me home. Now, how much ham and beef my mother had to buy to get that service, I don't know. But it was lovely. And then we lived for a while as well in a place called Newtown, which at the time was a very ordinary working class suburb. And a cousin of my mother, it was his house, and he was separated, I think, or divorced, one or the other. And living there as well was his sister and her husband and children. And then there's a couple not long married, and then there was us. Now, the thing was, that side of my mother's family, they were lookers. I remember her cousin, Uncle Ron. Oh my gosh, he was such a handsome man. oh dear me. And Auntie Myra, she was beautiful. She really was. And there was another one, another cousin of the same side, Junie. And I was just stunned. I couldn't speak whenever she was around. I was just so overwhelmed by her beauty. And eventually, we lived for a while in what had been, during the war years, army barracks. And after the war, they were used to convert into temporary housing for people before they received the Australian equivalent of a council house. And again, it would have been very difficult for my parents, but I had a lot of fun living there, really a lot of fun. And I met one of my lifelong friends there. We were at school together, and then we moved away. We were eventually allocated a house, and so that was at the end of the friendship. Barely a year later, in school, and the door opens and the headmaster walks in with a new boy. And it was my friend from the housing settlement. And we just went on to become, we are still friends to this day. I mean, his family, they lived not far from me. They were like a second family to me. I spent a lot of time with them. And with them, I could do all the sort of silly things that you do when you're in your childhood and your adolescence, and they would humour me. Whereas I might get a clip across the ear. But I know I have so many happy childhood memories. One of the things in particular I remember, Mum, every Sunday lunch would do the same dish. It was a roast leg of hogget. Not mutton, not lamb, hogget. Hogget was less expensive than mutton. And the three of us, my brother, my sister, myself, we loved to get the knuckle end and to suck all the marrow out of it. And there were constant squabbles. In the end, my mother decided on a rota. Today, this Sunday, it would be Barry's turn. Next Sunday, Robin's. After that, it was Kevin's, and then we'd start over again. And it's only in recent years, thinking about it, I thought, it didn't occur to us that perhaps Dad might have liked it as well. And yet, every Sunday, he sat there watching us devour the knuckle end. And he was always saying to us, I'd do anything for you kids. And when I thought about that story with the knuckle bearing, I thought, that really is a sacrifice. Something that you would really enjoy yourself, but now the kids are enjoying it, so let them do it. When I sort of reached adolescence, I discovered theatre. I'd always wanted to act, even as a child. In fact, when I was still in primary school, the teacher had arranged for us to do a play in the class. And I'd been given a female role. That didn't worry me. The important thing was I was acting. And because we had to get our costumes from home, so I told my mother, I said, look, I've got to wear a dress. So she brought out one of her old dresses. And I looked and I thought, oh, that's awful. That's awful. I don't know why I thought that, but I was more embarrassed to be seen wearing that particular dress than to be seen wearing a dress. But when I discovered Amdram, that was, opened up a whole new world to me. We had an institution in Australia called a School of Arts, and I think the equivalent here would be a Mechanics Institute. And these places, they provided all sorts of things. They had a library, and you could go there and play chess and what have you. And this Amdram company put on their performances there. The difficult thing was that the premises weren't licensed for public performance, and the council was getting a bit heavy. In the end, the trustees agreed to make some changes, the changes necessary to the hall, so that it met the licensing requirements. But somebody from the company had to do all the hard work. They would cough up with the money, but we had to do the hard work. And when it was all done, it was brilliant because we had, it was a little theatre, because we performed 2 weeks. Then the third week, the theatre was dark while we struck the set, put the new set, and then come up with another play. So most Amdram companies, they're probably going to do about 2 productions a year, whereas we were doing one every fortnight, a new production every fortnight. And it was wonderful. It really was wonderful. And there I met this young woman, and we became very close and went up marrying. And we were very happy together. And then I had a couple of other friends. They were still friends, well, one of them, because one, Barbara, to give her a name, she was perhaps my closest, the greatest influence on me. She died some years ago. But we all came over to the UK together. Well, I say together, we're all at the UK at the same time. And my wife and I, we decided when we arrived, because she'd found out about me, about my gay side, we agreed to separate. And we still kept in touch. Now, we both had a visa which allowed us to stay for 2 years only. So I went along to the Home Office to see about having that extended. And they said, no, it can't be extended, you'll have to go back to Australia. And I said, well, my wife. Now, they didn't know that we weren't living together anymore. I said, but my wife doesn't have that same restriction. So what happens if I have to go back and she doesn't want to go back? You'll be separating a man and his wife. How I said that with a straight face, I don't know. They said, well, sorry, but that's how it is. Now, I think not long after that, the rules were changed so that both spouses would have to go back. But hey, I went back to Oz. And the company I was working for at the time, they applied for what was called an employment voucher. And when that came through, I simply hopped on a ship and came back, and I've been here ever since with a few breaks. So when I came back to the UK, and I was allowed to stay as long as I wished, there was 1 or 2 restrictions, but minor. And I tried to form a gay relationship. It didn't really work out, and I thought, right, okay, I'll go back to being straight. And I met another young woman, French girl, and we were together for quite a number of years, and we were very, very happy. And I'd been, playing around. But again, for me, being gay was a sexual thing. It wasn't an emotional thing. And then one day I met this bloke, a young guy, and he asked me if I was out. And I thought, what an odd question. I said, well, no. And I said, oh, I am. And it really got me thinking. And that, it wasn't very long afterwards, there was a program on BBC, I think it was Man Alive, dealing with the subject of homosexuality. And we watched it, my then girlfriend and I. And there were a group of men who were out gays. And there was also a woman, and she explained that her husband had been a doctor. And they lived in some small town, didn't say where. And he'd been caught soliciting in a public toilet. And because they were known in the village or the town, it caused quite a scandal. But they dealt with it, and not very long afterwards, he brought up breakfast things, a tray with tea on it, the newspaper, and he just said, "Oh, there's something in the newspaper which might be of interest." And then off he went. And she's flipping through the newspaper, and then saw there was a report that he'd been caught yet again. I thought, oh God. And what he'd done, after he'd left the tray with his wife, he'd hopped in the car and drove off somewhere and committed suicide because he couldn't face the scandal. And I was sitting there watching that, and it really shook me. And I thought, I don't want to get into that situation. I don't want to feel myself painted into a corner. I've got to find a way of actually being honest for the first time in my life. And it took me a while to do it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. And I don't know how I did it, to be quite honest, but I did do it. And I was glad that I did. And ironically, once I came out to her, I actually stopped playing around. And I've never been able to fully understand that. But yes, I just didn't. I wouldn't say I wasn't interested, but I didn't go out cruising anymore. But there came the time we talked about visiting Australia, but by that stage, it was the strain of living with an out gay man was becoming too much. So we agreed to amicably separate, or as amicably as possible. And the difficult thing was I went back to Australia, and my family, they're all expecting me to come back with my fiancée, and I turn up on my own. And so I had to explain just why I was there on my own, and it took me a while to do that. And I remember I was just sitting there at the table after dinner one night, or tea as we call it in Australia, with Mum and Dad, and I thought, I've got to do it. So I said, look, the reason I came back on my own is because I'm gay. And I don't know whether it was my father or my mother, but one of them said, "You're not, are you?" "Oh no, oh, you're joking?" I thought, why would I joke about something like that? But bless them, I never ever had any problems. Never ever, they never treated me any differently from the next day on. The only thing that I do regret a little is that, leaping forward now, is that when my partner died, that was devastating. Because he'd been in Lighthouse, and they rang me, it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, with the news that he'd died. And I I just ran around the place like a headless chicken. And I thought, what do I do? And I thought, well, I'll ring Mum and Dad. And so I rang. My mother answered the phone. Dad never answered the phone. And I told her what had happened. And I could hear my father asking in the background, oh, what is it? Who is it? And Mum just said, oh, it's Barry. His friend's died. And I wanted to say, Mum, it's not my friend. But, yeah, it was pointless. That wasn't the time to have that sort of argument. The important thing, and also the important thing was that they accepted him. They accepted that he was important for me. So I thought, no, we can have a political discussion some other time. But no, that was really difficult.
Darlings, welcome to a journey that's more dazzling than a Hollywood premiere. Picture a world where you can hear the echoes of great-grandparents' laughter, bear witness to your grandparents' daring adventures, and relive your parents' most cherished moments. This dream is not out of reach. It's the driving force behind Silver Screen Family. They swoop in like modern-day magicians, capturing these priceless memories and weaving them into films that will stand the test of time. These tales aren't mere anecdotes, they're vessels of wisdom and values. Through them, life's lessons are passed down from one generation to the next, a legacy more valuable than the finest jewels. Whether it's overcoming adversity, embracing change, or savoring life's smallest joys, these stories offer insights no classroom could ever replicate. Silver Screen Family is like your family's personal time machine, capturing stories in all their glory. It's like Netflix, but instead of binge-watching shows, you're binge-watching your family's greatest hits. Together, let's create enduring legacies that will touch the hearts of generations to come. Visit silverscreenfamily.com today and let Silver Screen Family help you create a lasting tribute to your loved ones. Don't wait. Start preserving your family memories now.
Going back to Susan, when I came back, I tried to be political, and that's when I got involved in two different organizations. One was what became known as Consenting Adults in Public, and that was that was a theatre company formed by Peter Scott Breslin, and God, really, that was really great. I really loved doing that. We used to have workshops as well. I remember on one occasion, the question was, if there was one body part that you could change, what would it be? And everybody was going, oh, I changed my nose is too big, or my ears stick up. And it got to me, and I said, well, I changed my nipples because I've got the most boring nipples around. And everybody went, and I thought, well, it's nipples for heaven's sake. and they were really boring, but I was looking down on the floor sort of thing. Oh dear. But, and another organization I became involved in, and funny enough, it was a straight Australian friend put me onto it. He'd noticed an ad in this Australian publication that somebody was proposing a social group for Aussies and gay Aussies and Kiwis. So I went along, answered the ad, and he said, oh, come along to my place. A few others have responded to that ad. So I turned up, and this middle-aged bloke answered the door, and he looked vaguely familiar, and I couldn't think why. And so, okay, well, there were two other guys there, both New Zealanders, as it happened. And when the host went out to get some one of them kept giving me this funny look, sort of, like that. And I thought, what's wrong with him? And when the host went out to get the coffee, he rushed over to me and said, "It's Roger Gleaves." Now, Roger Gleaves, there was a big scandal in the early 80s. ITV they started making a documentary about all these young boys that were running away to London, trying to find a better life. And they did an awful lot of filming at King's Cross Station, because most of them got off at King's Cross. And they noticed this bloke in ecclesiastical garb. And this bloke, it turned out, he called himself the Bishop of Medway. He wasn't a bishop at all. What he was doing, he was picking up these young lads, taking them back, and having his wicked way with them. And a lot of the time, he would get them to sign over their housing benefits, whatever the benefits were they had, over to him, so that they were actually completely controlled by him. And there was one young lad was found murdered, but there wasn't enough evidence. It was thought that the Gleaves was implicated, but there wasn't enough evidence to say it was definitely him. Definitely him. The title of that ITV documentary was Johnny Go Home. Now, if you fast forward a few years, the Fine Young Cannibals, their first hit was Johnny Come Home, and it's based on that. But anyway, so there we are in this bloke's house, knowing that he was implicated in the death of this young guy, and they'd been doing, exerting all sorts of control and pressure on these other young guys, coming to London to look for a better life. So we decided, when we left, we got together and we said, look, the idea, a social group for Aussie and Kiwi gays, it's not a bad one, but we don't want to be involved with this bloke. So we just took it on from there. But and we kept going for quite a while, and all we did was we'd meet together about once a month and just sit around, chatting and drinking and whatever. And we all agreed that it was enjoyable because you could sit there talking about things without having to explain what you're actually talking about. But the slightly funny thing was that we felt that the reason he'd proposed this a social group for Aussies and Kiwis was because most Aussies and Kiwis in London were young guys, and they probably a lot of them wouldn't have been in London long enough to have known the story about him and Johnny Go Home sort of thing. Instead of which it gets half a dozen older guys who knew everything about the story. So that didn't come to much fruition for him. But we went on and we just kept getting together on a regular basis and just chatting. And some of the friendships formed there. I'm still friends with some of the people. So there was some good that came out of that bad. But going back to consenting adults, we did a lot of things there. One of the plays we did, which was so much fun, it was Tea Trolley, which Peter had written, and it was an adaptation of Midsummer Night's Dream. And I'd not long started a relationship with a guy who joined the company at the same time as me. And so we were cast as the clones, which meant I had to get my hair cut really short and to grow a moustache. But halfway through rehearsal, we had a big falling out. But the show must go on, so we carried on. And we took that. We performed it up on the Heath one year at midnight, and we had so much success. I didn't think it would work, but everybody said, yeah, let's do it on the Heath. And I don't know, there was a horde of people gathered around us. I don't think anybody was cruising at all. They'd all come to see the entertainment. But that was really great. And we also did workshops so that you're exploring aspects of being lesbian and gay. So it wasn't just an Amdram company. It was a lot of things. I suppose the thing that I'm most proud of that we did with consenting adults, we did a play called Antibody. And it was the first play in the UK dealing with AIDS. It was written by an American woman. She was a friend of Peter's. And it was a wonderful script. I was fortunate enough to be given the main role, the role of the young man who's dying from AIDS. Now, when there's a scene at the end where he leaves a message for people, warning them of the perils of AIDS, and he mentions what the figures are. When we started rehearsal, it was something like about 20. And that figure was updated constantly. It really was extraordinary. But the wonderful thing about the play was I had the central character, and I was on stage throughout, with the exception of the final scene after my character had died. And it wasn't just a gay play, because there was William, to give him his name, his straight brother, and lesbian friends and gay friends. And all these people important in his life helped him deal with his illness, deal with his impending death. And the production mirrored that, because I was on stage all the time. There was no way I could become the diva, because the others said, well, stuff you do your own bloody makeup then. So just as William needed the support of his friends and family to deal with his impending death, I needed the help and support of my cast members to help with the costume change. And there's William's final scene. He wants to leave a message for people, and his brother, his straight brother, comes to film it. And he sets the camera up at the end of his bed, and William is sitting there with a notepad and a pencil. And I was, very, very taut. And then the brother says, look, forget the camera. Just think that you're talking to friends. And this is where it gets a bit shameful. I used to milk that scene, something terrible. I can't explain how I knew, but I could sense how long I could drag it out. So when he said, pretend you're talking to your friends, and I would sit there on the bed, twiddling with his pencil, trying to find the moment so I could stop. And I think, I can go on another few seconds. But other nights, I thought, oh no, it's got to be quick. And then when I thought the moment was right, I said, my name is William, and I'm dying of AIDS. And then it went on. And that play, it was, I suppose it's one of the things that gives me, I was going to say proudest, but that gives me so much satisfaction. It really was such a well-written play, such a good play. I mean, it was well crafted. that sounds boring, but it was well crafted. The politics of it were right. And initially, when I saw all the dialogue I thought, how on earth am I going to do this? And yet, because it was so well written, it wasn't a challenge. It didn't become a problem at all.
Hi, hello, this is Darren Brown. I just wanted to say I was one of the first people to have Danny come and film my parents for me. And it was one of the best things I think I've ever done. It was a really beautiful thing. It's a very discreet, lovely, gentle process. My mum and dad loved it. I actually did the interviewing, and sometimes Danny does that, but it was quite nice to do that myself. And I interviewed them both, and then together, and left everything in the hands of Danny, and he created this beautiful set of films, which I've now got forever. And with a young nephew growing up, it's going to be a wonderful way at some point for him to get to know his grandparents, and it will always be a beautiful thing to have. And the act of listening to their stories, quite aside from preserving them, but actually just listening to them and spending time with them and asking those questions and digging deep into their background and just finding out things that I didn't know was really wonderful. And now I've got a record of that forever. I really, really recommend it. It's a lovely afternoon. They are the nicest guys to have in your house. And it's Danny himself who comes over and does it, and clearly loves doing it too. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did, and it comes to mean as much to you as it did to me. Thanks.
Hello, darlings. Do you know of someone fabulous itching to join our sassy adventure? Don't keep it a secret. We're on the lookout for more stars to light up our video podcast. Get in touch with us today. Stay fabulous, subscribe, and let resilience reign supreme. Now let's get back to the show, darlings.
I'd always wanted to be an actor, even from a very early age. And I think, very early teens. The TV guide had a bit about a program which had been made based on real events made by the ABC, the Oz equivalent of the BBC, about some convicts that had escaped the colony, but they'd spent days and days drifting around and ran out of food and water and almost perished before they were recaptured. And in this guide, the director was quoted as saying, the difficult thing is that no matter how good the actor is, it's difficult finding somebody who looks as if they haven't eaten, in about the best part of a month. And I thought, this is my big break. So I wrote to him, I said, you want a skinny actor? I'm your man. and bless him. He wrote back to me. Of course, I was too young to realize that the program had already been made, but he wrote back to me, invited me to go along and meet him. And I thought, my God, this is it, I'm on my way. I could see my name up in lights straight away. And the first disappointment was when I turned up at the office, it was just like any other office. It was so boring, but bless him, he really was sweet. He asked me why I wanted to act. And then he didn't try and dissuade me, but he said, look, and it was true, but there weren't many people who made their living from acting in Australia. It was, if you wanted to be an actor, you end up having to go abroad. But, and so he didn't try and dissuade me, but he just pointed out the problems and suggested that there was a director of NIDA, which is the Australian equivalent of RADA. He said, they've got a play on at the moment. Go along and have a word with him and see about if you can get into NIDA. And where this little theatre was, it was some distance from where we lived, and my father, bless him, drove me all the way over, and we hung around waiting for the interval, and the bloke came out, and he spent 5 minutes, if that, and I don't remember what he said, but didn't give me any encouragement at all. But that was a shame. But now I always wanted to act, so when I got into doing something like Antibody, it was really gratifying, especially doing it when we did tea trotty up on the heath. That was so much fun. But I think Antibody, that really gave me so much satisfaction in every sense of the word. But anyway, so my career, I come back from Oz. There was jobs were pretty scarce, but I managed to get a temp job typing because I was a pretty good typist, and in his oil company. And after they kept asking, "Oh, we need you back next week. We need you back next week," and eventually, there's a chap there who he was leaving to return to Australia. We'd become quite chummy, and he'd suggest to our manager, say, "Look, when I go, offer the job to Barry." And so we had a word. We said, "Now, have you ever done accounts?" I said, "Oh, yes, I've done accounts, yes. Oh, okay. So I get the job. And I remember distinctly, day one, I sat down at the desk on my own, before I'd had this other guy guiding me, saying, "Oh, do this, do that." And day one, I sat there, I looked around, I thought, what do I do now? I wouldn't say I panicked, but I thought, Barry, calm down. Debits in one column, credits in the other. As long as you keep that in mind, you'll be okay. And what did I discover? Not only did I have, I wouldn't say a talent, but not only was I good at doing accounts, but I actually enjoyed it. And all my working life, I tried to get away from doing accounts because I wanted to be an actor, not an accountant, for heaven's sake. But I discovered I was good at it. I wouldn't say I had a gift for it, but I was good at it. And then I left and I joined a marketing agency. And they'd been pretty close to bankruptcy, so when I joined them, they were starting all over again. And so I had to design, if you like, the accounting system for them. I remember one occasion the bank manager came up to meet the MD for a meeting, and so I was called in to go through the figures that I prepared. And when he realised that I hadn't actually studied accounting at all, and he said, "What, you've done all this?" And I said, well, yeah. I mean, to me, it just seemed logical, a sensible way to go about things. But and I thought, God, all my life I've tried to avoid becoming an accountant, and not only if I end up being an accountant, but I enjoy doing it. And so I've taken on from there. And then I also got involved with Gaze the Word after they were raided by Customs and Excise. Initially, I was involved in the defence campaign, because obviously with the until the case was over, they couldn't, because the way Gaze the Word was set up, people who got involved also became a director of the company. But with the case ongoing, it would have been too risky to have appointed any directors. But anyway, once that was all over and done with, I became a director, and then with the responsibility for the accounts, and set up, it sounds like I'm boasting now, but I set up reporting systems for the shop. And I was doing that for at least 10 years, I think. I loved it, really loved it. And I used to have to go in one Sunday a month, sit behind the till and sort of serve the customers. But it was, and I only resigned from gay as the word because I'd had a few years ago, I'd had a minor accident, and I thought, no, okay, it's time to. I gave up work. I thought, no, time to go, and I wasn't well enough. I thought I'm not really able to devote as much time as I felt was necessary to the show. I thought, no, it's best that I pull out and they can find somebody else to take over. So I thought, no, I've done my bit, so now's the time to go. But yeah, it was. I was really happy with those choices, the way things have panned out, because I've never really planned things or organised things there, but somehow or other things have worked out. And even when I was in the oil engineering company, one of the directors had an involvement in an engineering company outside of London, and they did conveyor systems, mainly for Ford. And he asked me to go down and work there, which I did. And again, I designed the accounting system for them. I mean, but the lovely thing with that was, say lovely. We had the company had a major customer was Ford, and particularly Ford in Germany. And the way that VAT worked in those days was altogether different to what it is now. And we had to put in a VAT return to Germany for all the sales that we'd making to Germany. And then I went over to Bonn, which was then the capital, with one of the directors to see how soon we could get a refund of the VAT that was due to us. Now, they'd just had reunification, and this very helpful young woman at the VAT office said, oh, it might be because of all the problems with the unification, it might be about a year before we can get the refund to you. And I could see the director sitting on the chair alongside me. He just about fell off his seat. And I said, well, is there any chance that we could speed it up a bit? Anyway, as it happened, we got it. I think we had to wait about a couple of months for it. But the unfortunate thing was that it coincided with one of our regular financial crises in this country, and the company was actually made bankrupt by the bank. But at the same time, I read it now. Not long after I'd left the oil company, and the office was in the West End, I came back one Friday night to have a drink with some of the old colleagues. And I got down, there just two of us, and one said, well, look, should we go on to this wine bar in Hanover Square? And I thought, I knew that wine bar. I wasn't crazy about it. I thought, well, okay, we'll go there. We go there, walk in, eye contact immediately with the guy gathering up the glasses. Anyway, we're sitting there chatting away, and every time he came by, there was a big exchange of eye contact. Then eventually, one of our colleagues said, oh, just going off to the loo. I said, okay. In the time that it took him to go to the loo, I managed to pass a note saying, give him my name and my note. I said, I'm a Gloucester Road, give me a ring. Give me a ring when you get there. And cut a long story short, he went on to become my partner there. And the funny thing was, because I'd said, he rang me and I said, okay, now, it's a few minutes walk from the tube station. So when you get to the little church, that's my street. I waited and waited and waited, no sign of him, nothing. And I thought, well, this is very odd. And then the phone rang again. They said, look, I'm back at the tube station. I can't see that little church. I said, well, look, wait there. I'll come and get you. So I went and got him, brought him back, got to the church on my corner. I said, this is the church. He said, that's not a little church. I thought, it is so a little church. And so he stood there. Our first date, we're having this big row. And throughout our time together, we had lots of arguments. So it was started in me to go on. And at one occasion, when eventually we decided that we were together, because before I met him, I hadn't had any real success forming relationships. They would last about 3 months, and then that'd be it. And there was one guy I met. We got on really well. And I thought, okay, Barry, the way to do it is this. And we were at a party one night, and I said to him, we should be partners. He said, why? I said, I think we'd get on really well. And he said, I don't think we would, Barry. I wasn't prepared for that sort of response. I said, it completely threw me. But in retrospect, I realized that I'd been putting too much emotional pressure on the others, and after a while, they couldn't handle that, and so it all just died. So when I met Simon, I thought, no, I'm not going to make that same mistake. We get on well. If we go out and carry on seeing one another, fine, but I'm not going to get involved. And after a while, I thought, Barry, you're involved, whether you like it or not. You're involved. And then, so he eventually moved in with me, but he was already positive. And so we only had a couple of years together. But they were good years, and really good years. And it's 30 years, and yet it's still painful. And yet, God, he was a funny but difficult one. Because he came home one day and he said, he'd been out the shops with this guy who had recently started working there. And this guy, well, lad about his age, had bought him this pullover. I said, oh, so why did he buy you a pullover? Oh, I don't know, he just wanted to buy me something. And I think, what's going on here? And I realized afterwards, well, I say realized, he was capable. I don't think I've known anybody so good at winding people up. He was known for it. And the awful thing is that he died before I found out whether he'd been winding up or whether he really had been given this pullover as a present by this bloke. And I've still got the pullover in my wardrobe, and when I open the wardrobe door and it's there, and I think, was that a joke or what? There's no way I could dispose of, because it's to dispose of that pullover would be to dispose of the memory. And although we weren't together very long, it was it was a deep and meaningful relationship. And I don't enjoy being on my own, but I couldn't bring myself to start another relationship. Because Simon he's still there. He's still there for me. And the lovely thing is that his family embraced and accepted me. And so I'm back here. I go back to Italy 3 or 4 times a year. So it's just... So together, we didn't have a lot of time together, but we're still there. He's still there. The influence is still there. And I think, had it not been, it's extraordinary how your life can change, and something with the time, something banal. Now, had I not gone up that night to have a drink with my former colleagues, I probably wouldn't have gone to the wine bar where he worked. And I've just remembered, and what made it more extraordinary, that Friday night should have been his night off, but he'd swapped duty with a colleague. So it was sheer chance that both of us got together on that night. Sheer chance. And I'm not superstitious. Well, I am really. but I do think that, especially for me when I think about my own life, that so many positive things have happened that at the time I think, oh, you don't really give them the right importance, the right value. It's only when you look back you think, oh, that led to this and that led to something else and so on. And I think I've never planned anything, but somehow I wouldn't say I've landed on my feet, but things have worked out well.
Thank you for tuning in to our video podcast series, Voices of Resilience. We trust that you found this episode both enlightening and enjoyable. Here at Silver Screen Family, we are driven by the conviction that every individual harbours unique stories that deserve to be preserved. This belief fuels our passion for creating films that capture the wisdom and experiences of our elders, ensuring that their legacy is etched in our memories for generations to come. If you would like to immortalise someone's story through film, why not get in touch with us today? We would be honoured to help you create a lasting tribute.